This week, it's time to get into Blue Rose RPG. Now, you can see by this cover, it's a type of romantic type fantasy. So, the thing is, the best way to think of it is kind of think of like the Renaissance era from our time frame. Just think the Renaissance with magic and everything. So that and of course, big thing in this once you get into it is that it's with being more of like romantic type fantasy. It's more it places more emphasis on actual role playing than it does combat, and it also emphasizes like the relationships that you build between your people. So in this first section, it gets into it does it gives a brief synopsis of what role playing is, what the romantic fantasy is, so that way it gives you like a good overview of what you're going to be doing. So it also gives you ideas on how to do your character, the setting and series, and this does use a different system than the D&D or Pathfinder. It uses what is called the Age system. It's the adventure gaming engine, which is something that is like I said, totally different than your Pathfinder or your D&D. So fifth edition is slightly different than your previous iterations of D&D, and Pathfinder tends to use the D20 system, which was made popular with D&D third edition. So and also then in this gets into the actual world of Blue Rose. So it gives gets into the description of the actual world. So it does come with a handy dandy map and everything. So you can see where this is the world, the main realm of Aldous, where the city of Aldous is pretty much right here near the lake. So the map, you can see the different the different kingdoms and everything. So Kern is pretty much the big evil empire, and so everything tends to be set in the city of Aldous, in the nation of the same name and everything. So it gets into like I said the kingdoms, and like I said, it's pretty much the Renaissance, basically with magic, as if magic did exist in our world during the time. So it gives a brief synopsis of the game, so that way you can actually get into further into the game. So just like other ones, books, it gets into this first ability, place it gets into the player section, it gives ideas for abilities and stuff. So with using a different system, it does have a slightly different character setup in there for the character sheet. So it does have different abilities than your typical D&D or Pathfinder. So it has accuracy, communication, constitution, dexterity, fighting, intelligence, perception, strength, and willpower. And you can be able to write down your weapons, any special powers you have, equipment, and this is pretty much a quick synopsis of the character sheet. So like I said, with using age system, it's slightly different than a fifth edition or the D20 system that Pathfinder uses. So with this, the system is kind of I find kind of odd because they use just basically six-sided dice, and so with the ability test, what you do is you use two, and you still have the same kind of uh, like a difficulty challenge that you have to beat or whatever. It's the same kind of concept. You have to get a certain number, and you roll use your abilities to do that. So you roll 3d6, and you have a whatever ability you have points in that, and if you do have focus, that does give you a bonus to that focus. So whatever you roll, you get that much plus. So like if, for instance, like if you roll 3d6 and you rolled threes on all of them, you'd have 9. Plus, like you had maybe say you had 2 in ability and 2 focus, because like you decided to maybe like focus on swordplay, for instance. You could then at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and say that the difficulty combat was like 11, you'd be able to beat that and everything for that, like a sword play type of deal. So they do have like what's called like a drama die. You did pick like a different colored d6 and everything, and like what it would do is let you in a sense do what's called stunts. And so like a stunt would be something like using the swordplay example. Think of something like the Princess Bride or whatever, and you're sitting there fencing, and like you try to do it like a stunt where you try to disarm your opponents, and you use the stunt, and like you have like same kind of concept with like a difficulty rating that you have to be able to beat and use that. You beat it, and then you get like a stunt point or whatever, where you're able to pull off the stunt of being able to disarm them, and then maybe you can flip the sword over and like catch it in midair type of deal as like a stunt. So like it has like a neat ability like that, stunt ability, where you can roll for it. So like this whole first section is pretty much like I said, difficulty challenge is what they call like a make test difficulty. So it's this same kind of concept as in like a D&D or Pathfinder. It's just like named differently, and you can see like the different types of like stuff that you'd have to try. So like if you're doing something like routine, it'd be kind of easy to beat, but like something that'd be like nearly impossible, like you can see, is like a lot harder to pull off. So like this pretty much first section is pretty much the whole character creation section. So like it gives descriptions on actions you can take. So like just like in combat and D&D or Pathfinder, it gives you options like actions that you can take, like move, attack, attack, move, or attack. All different kind of concepts and everything. So this is one of the few games I have yet to play myself, but I got it to see if I can get people into it and everything. So what kind of drew me to it is like kind of like the being like a different type of role playing game. Like I said, with being like the romantic type, it has more of like a specific focus, whereas like a D&D and Pathfinder tend to be more broad in that you can like you could run a romantic adventure in D&D or Pathfinder, but you could also run horror, and like it's much more broad and like not as, it's more general and not more specific. So yeah, like I said, this one is pretty much like this first chapter is getting into the basics, and like it does explain like a lot of stuff, like the stunts I mentioned. It gets into explaining that as well. So then like it gives like a brief overview of like what kind, like what to do with your characters, and of course like just like everything else, it gets into like the character creation as well. So it devotes like a whole chapter, and like it does do like you do have your different races and everything that like have like your different abilities. So like it doesn't have like your typical elves, dwarves, humans, or gnomes, halflings. What it has is like it has these Rydens, which are pretty much like think of Chronicles of Narnia, basically like walking, talking animals and everything. And of course, like you also like of course the humans are the main character, and of course you got also the night people here, which like is in a sense like a more magical and tuned type of race. So like it does give you different options, and of course you got like you can see here like a sea folk, which are different type of race compared to humans. So like humans tend to be like the base race for most for most campaign settings, and of course you got a new race called the Vada, and they're completely different than like your other ones. And so like they get into like later chapters get into like the history and everything of these races. So this is just like a quick overview of like the 4 races that you can pick, and of course it gets into the actual classes that you can pick and everything. So this like is pretty much like just another way, another different way of creating characters, and of course like the different classes like adept, expert, and of course warrior. So like they have the kind of like the same kind of concepts of as like your say your traditional classes, as in like sorcerer, wizard, fighter, barbarian, but like it's just kind of like a more like a generic, and like it's more like things are more like a combined. So like a warrior tends to be more encompassing of like your martial type classes, but with skills and like abilities and stunts and stuff, you able to be able to go down different paths of being able to, in a sense, create like unique characters. And so like and with the character creation also gets into like as you can see the equipment and stuff you can pick up, and also it gets like further into like it has like a whole section of like corruption, where you could become quite evil, because like the evil nation of Kern used to in the history control all this, and it was like an evil time, and like when it was kind of like a malevolent type of theocracy, and like, it was overthrown like in the history like 1,000 years ago or so. And so the whole later chapters around history that gets into that. So and like with this, it gives like a bunch of examples of all different types of options you can do with your players. So like and then of course like you have a whole chapter like that gets into those abilities that you have, and so like it gives like what's known as a focus. So think of like yeah, like a specialty, like one of your skills in like D&D. Like you may have like take a feat or something that gives you a bonus. So that's what kind of the focus is. That's the concept, at least the focus. And like it breaks it down, like the focus is by like your abilities and everything. So like it's easier to like find what is what for like whatever type of class you're using. And of course it got the talents, which are pretty much the equivalent of your feats in D&D or Pathfinder. So it also like it breaks down into like a specialization. So it gives like it's slightly different system, but it still gives you like a lot of like options to be able to make a unique character and everything. So like and of course like the access to specializations you get, in a sense, like those like subclasses, or like specialty classes, sort of like the arcane archer or the shadow dancer in your traditional D&D game. So like and it's but it's just like other games, it does give you like a great chance of being able to like make a new character that you can kind of like make you feel like it's your own, instead of just pulling out like some generic type of character. So in the course chapter 4 is all about like the magic and how it actually works in this world. So like I'll reiterate that like think of this world as like the Renaissance, as if it had magic in it. So like this whole chapter is on how the actual magic works, and like how you would actually run it, and how you'd be able to take like the so-called spells and you use it in game. So like you do have like it's not necessarily divided into like divine or arcane magic, but it's more of like a broad term where you could, in a sense, create even more unique character if you're creating like a spellcaster type, or like you could maybe kind of combine the two type of deal. So it just like, in a sense, like reiterate like, being able to give more options to be able to create this that unique character that like you could create. And you could, in a sense, play this game like several different times and play several different, vastly different types of characters. So then like it gets into like that this first part is like 113 114 pages long of just like the whole creation for characters and like the background information for feats, spells, and the whole 9 yards for players and everything. And so then you have like the rest of the book, basically like where this is like the actual like history that I've mentioned. It gets into like the what has gone on before. So like it gets into like what I mentioned where like the evil kingdom had taken control, and then like there was a rebellion because like they overthrew the like in a sense the evil emperor, and like it gets into like I said what's gone on before to kind of be able to create the backstory. And so you're not just thrown in like, okay, well, what happened before? So you have like this whole lush history on like what's like happened before, and of course it gives like a brief timeline, like for instance right here of like all the kings and queens that have reigned in this not only the city but the kingdom of Aldous for the last several hundred years since what was known as the Great Rebellion, which, like I said, overthrew the evil empire that was ruled by like an evil sorcerer. So like this, like I said, is pretty much like an in-depth section on the history, and so then it even goes into even further, like the kingdom of all this and everything. So it gives descriptions of the races that you would actually play like back in like the character creation. So like the humans, the sea folk, the Vada, the actual Raiden, like I said, like the talking animals. So like I'll mention again, like I think of like Chronicles of Narnia with like Aslan, the talking lion, and you could have like talking bears, talking cats, just pretty much like everything. So this is pretty much like the and it's a chapter where it actually goes in depth and gives you like also gives you like NPCs like the queen who's actually ruling it. It gives like another uh, description for like an important NPC, and like it gives you descriptions on like all the different guilds and councils and like background organizations that are actually running the city, and like the pretty much like set up shop in the city of Aldous. So like I said, the city of Aldous is like pretty much the main point of the campaign that's set in the heart of the actual kingdom of Aldous. And like with the map that I showed, you could show and again like quick the world map. They actually like give like a good description on like the world. So like it's mainly set in, like I said, here, and you can see like the little lake right there where the city of Aldous is. So it gives like a whole map of the world. Plus on the back side it does give you an actual map of the city, which is, like I said, the main set. And so you actually have like the at least an idea of how the not only the continent that this is in, but in the city as well. So like it actually does go into like in depth and everything. So like it actually gets into like ideas and like on how things work. And so like you can see like a brief paragraph on like sexuality, and like in this game it's one of those things where it's like a much more open about stuff like that than in our actual real world, and it's much more accepting on different views and everything, which is actually a good thing, and at least in this sense and everything. So it even goes into further depth of like the arcane arts and like the actual like the gods and like the different religions and stuff. So like it gives you like a whole slew of background information. So just this one book, which is like in a sense the core rule book, it gives you pretty much like everything you need to run a campaign for Blue Rose. And so there are other like other books that like companion books that you can get. Like I picked up one that's on the city. This is called the City of the Blue Rose, which goes into even further depth of the actual city and gives you even further information. But you don't necessarily need that. So like you can see like it gives you like a map here of the actual city of Aldous, which is like I said is the main focus for the campaign. So like it gives you like important places right within the city too. So this this book is definitely in, like I said, in depth with like the background information you have. So in a sense it gives you all as like a the DM or like as they call it here in the narrator. It gives you all the information that you could, in a sense, run a campaign for months and everything. So they like the map I showed. It does have one in here, and of course with the little crease in there, it's a little more difficult to actually see. So like, and then with that map, it actually goes into further breakdown of the actual areas, and it gives even further. Like I said, it goes even in depth of each area, not only just the races and the arcane, and like it also gives in-depth information on the actual areas, and so that way like if you decide to travel outside the city, you actually have enough information to get very in-depth for the people, NPCs, encounters that you would run outside of the city. So like so most of this book, as you can see, is like devoted to the actual background of the whole uh, realm itself. So so that way, like you have uh, a plethora of information. So like, and then that first part was on just like instance all this, and then this part actually gets into like the even further background of like the actual like other realms that you travel to. So uh, this is in a sense I think what drew me to this is the being able to this book being so in depth and given such like a great idea on like how things are, and like it gives you so much information on the whole world itself, whereas like sometimes you might pick up like maybe a source book for D&D that gives you enough to run the campaign, but like as the DM, you'd have to come up with probably like a lot of filler. So you'd have to, in a sense, kind of like create your own, which some people like, some people don't. So like in this with this one, what's great, especially for like beginners, is for beginner DMs, is it already gives you such great in-depth information. So that way you're not doing necessarily as much legwork as you would as if like you were picking up like say like a module on like someone's made like a new world, and you picking up a module on that, and then you're trying to run it, and like you're trying to fill the gaps and everything. So but it's like one of those things where it's like you have to kind of like to each his own and find like what works for you and everything. So but like I said, this is what I liked about the game, and what drew me to it and everything is like the whole the whole like the whole these chapters going so in depth on the whole background information for the world and everything. So like you in a sense can just kind of like pick up and like you can start running adventures and kind of learn as you go, and like in a sense, and like you have the information where like if like for instance like you come to like one of these new nations and everything, you already have like the whole information. So like okay, well I'm going to run an encounter in one of these areas, so you can read up and like okay, now I have all the information I need, and like be able to create much more better encounters, much more like role playing sessions, and it gives you like in a sense, like I said, the all the information you need to run such an in-depth and like with something that's so in depth with the background and everything that like yeah, and plus like I said, like it gives like a bunch of like the descriptions to NPCs, so like, you could in a sense use one of them as like in a sense like one of the main villains type of deal. So I'll reiterate that like that's what kind of drew me to this, is that like it was the in-depth knowledge and everything that they had in this book and everything. So like as you can see, most of this book is geared towards that history, the geography, the people, the places, and it gives like such great descriptions on everything that you need to know. And so, and of course, like every other core rule book, it does give like a section where, like I said, in here they're called narrators, and versus like maybe in D&D they're called dungeon masters, and of course there's also game masters in other games. So like it's pretty much like DM, narrator, GM. They're kind of all interchangeable. So this like whole chat, like this whole section is based for like the narrator or the DM, one who's basically running the game. So they do give you like a table of like 100 adventure ideas that you could in a sense like roll like a percentage dice, and like if you just kind of want to like roll for like one idea, or you can actually go down the whole list and be like, okay, like, and read everything, and like, oh, I like this idea, I like that idea, so like, and build up off that and everything. So in a sense, like this is, and yet this goes into depth on like how to actually run the game for your PCs or your player characters. So it gives you uh, a whole good section on being able to get in depth on how to actually run the game and everything. So, and this chapter isn't necessarily as big as the previous one. Of course, like I said, the previous one is the vast majority of the book, so it gives you such great in-depth background information. So, like, what this, in a sense, does give you enough information to be able to run the game effectively as a narrator, as they call it. So it does give you, like I said, reiterate enough information to be able to kind of springboard off and do your own thing with the source material that they have of the history and stuff in the previous chapters. And so, but like the source book that I did pick up that I mentioned, like the City of the Blue Rose, like well, not necessarily like just like other campaign books, like for instance, like the I've mentioned in like with D&D, the only one you really need is the Player's Handbook. They are good in that it expands upon it, but like it all depends on what you want to, how much you want to invest in the game, and how like or how much you actually do, or it all depends on like your unique situation. So, and one of the last chapters gets further into detail of and how you can run the game. So like it gives the DM, or in this case the narrator, enough of information to be able to run the game. Just like in the player's handbook for D&D, it has like a whole section devoted to just like the DM. So like that way, like I said, you can just pick up that book, or in this case, you can pick up just this book and be able to run a campaign on your own. So like it has this whole, like as you can see, the whole section for like rewards. So like experience, magical items, and like you can also pick up titles, which is like you could become like a say maybe a baron or a duke or something, like if you actually went down that way, or you could become like a respected member of like a guild or something. So it gives you like a whole guide on how to like run like a reward. So like think of like magic items and like treasure and stuff, but also expands on, like I said, the titles, like you become a baron or duke or anything. So, and of course it does give you like information on how to like run like your villains. So it gives you ideas and like monsters that you could face up against, and, when you for the times you do go outside of the city and everything. So you could, in a sense, run a whole campaign based just in the city of Aldous, or you could expand upon it in the rest of the world. So like they have like enough information to be able to do either or like I said, just run a campaign just in the city, or you could run a campaign outside, just outside of the city or in and around the world, or you could do like a mixture of both and everything. So it gives you like ideas of like the NPCs that you can square up against your characters and everything. So it gives you like a good plethora of information on that as well. So I'll reiterate that like this is pretty much what brought kind of got my interest in this, is that like in this game is that it's like seemed a very in-depth game on like not just like on the characters that you can create, but like the whole like history and like the whole world itself, and like it definitely gives a vibrant, lively world sense that like you're stepping like in a sense into a you're stepping out of our world into this world, and you in a sense not missing a heartbeat type of deal. So this is definitely worth it in my opinion if you're looking for something different other than say your D&D and Pathfinder, which tend to be the top two. So it does in here have like an adventure that you can run your characters through. So like it gives you this and everything, so you don't necessarily have to come up with anything on your own. So that's what's great about this is also it gives you something quick that you can do, a quick campaign or a quick scenario that you can run through to kind of get your feet wet in this game and everything. So this is yet just another game that like you can get into that's not necessarily D&D or Pathfinder. So like the other games, it's just like the other games I've gone through. So like I'll reiterate that like this one is definitely like what brought me to it was like the whole in-depth like it has on the history and like the background and like the whole like what's going on before to set it up and everything. So like I said, like if you're looking for something other than D&D or Pathfinder, this is definitely worth a pick up. And so like I've mentioned earlier in the video, it does use a different system than D&D or Pathfinder. So like it might take some getting used to if you're used to those two systems, or but if you're someone who's brand new to RPGs, it would be in a sense kind of easy. I think easier to pick up than like if you're coming from one of those, because like you're not necessarily having to learn a whole new like a whole different system. You're still learning a new system, but you're not necessarily coming from like a background of like let's say like the D20 system that the Pathfinder uses, or like the system that the 5th edition uses. So this, like I said, is yet another game that like you can pick up that in my opinion, is definitely well worth picking up. And if you're looking for an alternative to D&D or Pathfinder,